The galaxy was home to many species, some peaceful, others ruthless. At the heart of it all sat the Galactic Council, an assembly of the universe's most powerful and influential civilizations. For centuries, they had ruled over countless worlds, controlling the flow of resources, politics, and power. No one dared challenge their reign. But that was about to change. A fleet, unlike anything the Council had ever seen, was approaching. At first, they thought it was just another exploratory vessel, no different from the countless ships they encountered daily. But soon, the Council realized their mistake. The human fleet was no ordinary fleet. The ships gleamed with new technology, sleek and powerful, unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. From their observation stations, Council members watched in awe and confusion as the ships moved in perfect coordination. This was no accidental arrival. The humans were coming with purpose. The Council's leaders gathered in a high-tech chamber, debating what action to take. Some were skeptical, dismissing the human fleet as a mere misunderstanding. "It's just a few ships," one Council member said, her voice cold and dismissive. "They're not a threat." But others were not so sure. They had heard rumors of humans advancing faster than any other species in the galaxy. Some of them were even beginning to believe the stories. Humans, with their ever-growing technology, might be a force to reckon with. The leader of the Council, a tall, imposing alien with 4 eyes, looked out across the room. "Prepare for the worst," he commanded, his voice heavy with authority. "Send our fleets to intercept them. If they come to fight, we'll show them who rules this galaxy." Meanwhile, aboard the lead human ship, Captain Daniel Cooper stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. He knew the Council would be watching. He knew they would be scared. And that was exactly what he wanted. Humans weren't known for negotiating. They were known for conquering. "Status report," Captain Cooper ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Fleet is ready, Captain," came the reply from his communications officer. "All ships are in position, awaiting your orders." The fleet was vast. Many ships of varying sizes, from nimble scouts to heavily armored dreadnoughts. They were the culmination of years of research, hard work, and sacrifice. And now, it was time to show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. On the Council's end, confusion turned to fear as their sensors began picking up more information about the human fleet. It wasn't just size that was alarming. It was the technology. Advanced weaponry, near impenetrable shields, and the unmistakable scent of power radiated from the fleet. This wasn't a simple display of force. This was something far beyond the Council's understanding. "Begin preparations for contact," the Council leader ordered reluctantly. "We must find out what they want." As the first human ship crossed into the Council's territory, a sense of unease spread through the Council's chambers. The humans were here, and the galaxy would never be the same. The human fleet moved deeper into Council space, its ships cutting through the stars with incredible precision. The Council's observers continued to track them, each moment adding to the growing tension. It was clear now that this wasn't just a group of explorers. This was a carefully planned invasion, or perhaps something even more dangerous. A challenge. As the human ships came into full view, the Council's defense systems activated automatically, ready to protect their borders. They had never seen such ships before. Some were massive, hulking structures that seemed to defy the laws of space, while others were sleek and quick, darting around with precision. The technology was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was advanced, yes, but it was more than that. It was practical, effective, and dangerously efficient. On board the flagship, Captain Daniel Cooper stood tall, his eyes watching the screen before him. His heart beat steadily in his chest, but his mind was sharp, focused. He had led humanity's fleet into battle before, but never against such a powerful force. Still, he knew they had the advantage. The human fleet wasn't here to start a war, but they were prepared for one. "Captain," said his first officer, Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, her voice breaking the silence. "We've reached their border. The Council's fleet is moving into position. Cooper nodded, his fingers tapping gently on the console. We knew this would happen. Get ready. Let's see how they react. The screen flickered, and a transmission from the Council appeared. Their representative, a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and multiple antennae, stared at them coldly. This is Council Fleet Command. State your intentions, human. Captain Cooper met the alien's gaze. His voice was calm but firm as he spoke. We come in peace, he said, his words echoing through the comm system. But we are not here to be intimidated. We are here to show you that humanity does not bow to anyone. There was a brief silence on the other end. The Council representative's expression remained unreadable, though Cooper could sense the shock behind their words. They had never met anyone like humanity. For centuries, the Council had controlled the galaxy through fear and strength. They had never faced a species so bold, so determined. You are outnumbered, the Council representative finally said, trying to regain control. Leave now, or we will take action. Cooper's lips curled into a slight smile. You misunderstand us, he replied. You don't get to tell us what to do anymore. At that moment, the entire human fleet shifted, moving together in perfect harmony. It was a display of power, and it was impossible to ignore. The ships were so tightly coordinated that they seemed like one massive unit, ready to strike. The Council representatives exchanged uneasy glances. The fleet was more than just impressive, it was overwhelming. The Council had always believed that they were the supreme power in the galaxy. Now they were faced with a species that didn't fear them. Instead, they felt challenged. Captain Cooper gave a final command. Let's make our intentions clear. A low hum filled the air as energy began to build in the human ships. Shields powered up, weapons locked into place. The Council's fleet hesitated for a moment, realizing they were no longer in control. Prepare for battle, Cooper muttered under his breath. The first shots would come soon. The galaxy was about to witness humanity's power. And for the first time in centuries, the Council was unsure of its next move. The Council's fleet hung in the space ahead, a large and formidable force ready to strike if needed. They had underestimated the human ships before, but now, as the energy from the human fleet built up, they felt the full weight of their mistake. They were about to face something unlike any other species they had ever encountered. Captain Daniel Cooper stood on the bridge of the flagship, his eyes scanning the endless expanse of space. The tension was thick, but he knew his crew was ready. Every ship in the fleet was equipped with advanced weaponry and defensive systems, more powerful than any of the Council's ships. Humanity's fleet wasn't just a show of force, it was a demonstration of their ingenuity and determination. And now, it was time to show the galaxy what they were capable of. Captain, we're ready to engage, Lieutenant Sarah Hayes reported from her station, her voice calm but laced with anticipation. Cooper nodded, his expression hardening. Let's make sure they know we're not here to be pushed around. The human ships shifted position, their formations becoming even more precise. A low hum filled the air as power surged through their systems. The Council's fleet watched in disbelief as humanity's ships synchronized perfectly, like a single living entity. Each ship communicated with the others seamlessly, something the Council could only dream of achieving. Captain, they're preparing to fire. One of the crew members called out, his voice filled with urgency. Cooper's hand shot out to the console in front of him, pressing a button that initiated the fleet's primary defense system. Shields on every ship flickered to life, a brilliant blue light glowing around the vessels as they braced for the Council's attack. The human fleet wasn't just relying on firepower. They had invested heavily in advanced shielding technology that could withstand nearly any assault. And then, without warning, the Council fired. A barrage of energy beams shot across the space between the two fleets, bright and powerful. The human fleet absorbed the blasts without flinching. The shields shimmered under the assault but held strong. The Council's ships hesitated, amazed at how the human fleet seemed to shrug off their attacks with ease. Return fire, Cooper ordered. His voice was steady, but there was an undeniable thrill in his chest. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The human fleet unleashed its weapons in perfect unison. Energy cannons, missiles, and railguns all fired at once, sending waves of destruction toward the Council's ships. The power behind the weapons was overwhelming. Each shot seemed to hit its target with pinpoint accuracy, tearing through the enemy ship's defenses like paper. The Council was stunned. Their ships, once seen as the pinnacle of technological superiority, were now being battered by humanity's might. It was clear that the human fleet was more than just an invasion force. It was a force of nature. The Council's ships attempted to retaliate, but their weapons were no match for the advanced technology humanity had developed. The human fleet was simply too fast, too powerful. Direct hit on the enemy flagship. Someone on the bridge reported, his voice filled with awe. The flagship of the Council's fleet had been struck head-on by a human missile, and it was starting to break apart. As the chaos of the battle raged on, Captain Cooper watched the damage unfold. He knew that the Council was beginning to realize they couldn't win this fight. Humanity's technology had given them an edge, a dangerous edge that the Council had never expected. "Hold steady," Cooper said calmly, watching the Council's fleet struggle. "We've only just begun." The battle was far from over, but humanity had already proven its strength. The galaxy would never view them the same way again. The battle between humanity's fleet and the Council's forces had erupted in a flash of blinding light and deafening noise. Energy beams and missiles streaked across the vast emptiness of space, but it was clear to everyone watching. This was not just a fight for survival. This was a battle for the future of the galaxy. Captain Daniel Cooper stood at the helm of his flagship, his fingers gripping the console tightly. The sounds of battle were all around him. Beeps from incoming fire, shouts from his crew, and the occasional report of a hit. The calm exterior of the human fleet was beginning to show cracks as the fight grew fiercer, but Cooper knew his fleet was well prepared. They had trained for this moment, and they weren't going to back down. "Report, Lieutenant," Cooper ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Shields holding at 90%, Lieutenant Sarah Hayes replied, her fingers moving quickly over her console. "We're taking hits, but nothing too serious. The Council is using energy blasts, but they're not as effective against our shields." Cooper nodded, his eyes still fixed on the main screen. The battle was unfolding exactly as he had expected. The Council's fleet, once so proud of their dominance, was now struggling to keep up with humanity's advanced technology and tactics. "We've got them on the run, Captain," another officer called out. "Their formation is breaking apart. Some ships are trying to retreat." Cooper's lips tightened into a thin smile. "Don't let them get away. We finish this now." His order was clear, and the fleet responded instantly. The human ships moved with precision, striking at the Council's weakest points. Each missile, each shot, was calculated. No wasted effort, no mercy. On the Council's side, things were quickly falling apart. The first wave of energy blasts had been absorbed by the human shields, but now the Council's ships were taking heavy damage. The massive warships, which had once been the pride of the Council, were now struggling to keep up. Some were already crippled, their engines disabled, while others were listing dangerously to the side. "We can't keep up like this," one of the Council commanders shouted as his ship was rocked by another strike. "The humans, they're too fast, too powerful." Inside the Council's command center, panic began to spread. They had never imagined that a small fleet from an unknown species could inflict such damage. The Council had prided itself on its military strength, but humanity's fleet was proving that power was not enough to guarantee victory. "Launch the reserve forces," another Council leader ordered. "Bring in reinforcements. Now." But it was already too late. The human fleet, emboldened by their success, pressed on, unwilling to give the Council any chance of recovering. The flagship, guided by Captain Cooper, moved swiftly through the battle, weaving in and out of enemy fire, targeting ships with deadly accuracy. "Enemy flagship is in our sights," came the call from the weapons officer. "Should we engage?" Cooper's expression was unreadable as he stared at the Council flagship on the screen. It was still heavily armed, but it was battered, and its shields were weakening fast. He had already seen enough. This battle would end soon. "No," Cooper said, his voice calm. "We don't destroy them completely. Leave them with a message. Their leaders will know what it means." The final blow came swiftly. A well-placed missile hit the Council flagship, causing it to stagger, then explode in a burst of fire and debris. The Council's fleet was shattered, their forces scattered and crippled. The human fleet moved in to finish the job, capturing the surviving ships and disabling their weapons. The battle was over. The Council had been beaten, and humanity had shown the galaxy what it was capable of. Cooper stood still for a moment, his eyes on the aftermath of the battle. He felt the weight of the victory, but there was no joy in his heart. This was only the beginning. The real test was yet to come. The galaxy had been shaken, but it hadn't yet realized the full strength of humanity's resolve. The wreckage of the Council's fleet drifted in space, shattered and broken. The once proud armada lay in ruins, and the survivors were retreating, regrouping, trying to make sense of the disaster that had just unfolded. But amidst the chaos and confusion, one thing was clear. Humanity was not just a passing force. They had proven themselves in battle, and the galaxy would have to take notice. Captain Daniel Cooper stood at the center of the bridge, staring at the flickering screen that displayed the remaining Council ships. The battle had been swift, but the consequences were far from over. Humanity had struck a blow to the Council, but that didn't mean the Council had given up. There was still a long way to go before this was truly over. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Lieutenant Sarah Hayes reported, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "It's from the Council." Cooper's eyes narrowed. He had expected this. After a defeat like that, the Council would have to try to regain control. They wouldn't give up easily. "Put it through," he said, his voice calm but firm. The screen flickered again, and this time, the face of a Council representative appeared. A tall, thin alien with pale green skin and a stern expression. His voice was low, but there was an edge to it. "Human Captain Cooper," he began, his tone measured but laced with frustration, "we are willing to discuss terms of surrender. We will offer you peace in exchange for your fleet's withdrawal from our territory." The Council representative's words hung in the air, but Cooper remained still, his face unreadable. Peace, a mere offer of surrender, wasn't enough. The Council had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now they were trying to negotiate their way out of the situation. "You've offered us peace, but at what cost?" Captain Cooper's voice was calm, but his words carried weight. "You expect us to turn back, to let you keep your hold over this galaxy, and just walk away? No, that's not how this works. Humanity doesn't bow to anyone." The Council representative flinched slightly, but he regained his composure quickly. "We are willing to share technology, resources, and knowledge. We can help you grow, make you stronger. All we ask in return is that you respect our authority." Cooper stared at the screen, his thoughts racing. The Council's offer sounded tempting, but he knew better than to trust them. The Council had ruled the galaxy through fear, subjugating species for centuries. They had no interest in sharing anything with humanity except their power. "We don't need your help," Cooper replied firmly. "Humanity has stood on its own for far too long. We don't need to be made stronger. We are already stronger than you can understand." The Council representative paused, his eyes narrowing. "Then you will refuse our offer. You would rather continue this war." "We've already shown you what we're capable of," Cooper said. "If you want peace, you'll have to come to us. You'll have to recognize humanity's place in this galaxy. We won't be silenced, and we won't be controlled." The representative looked defeated for a moment, but then his expression hardened. "Very well, Captain Cooper. But know this, rejecting our offer will have consequences. We may have lost this battle, but the war is far from over. The screen went dark, and the transmission ended. Cooper remained standing, his mind racing. The Council had just revealed its true nature. They were desperate, and they were not finished yet. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered, turning to his crew. "This is just the beginning." The Council had made its move, but humanity had already shown its strength. Now, the real fight for the galaxy was about to begin. The tension between humanity and the Council was palpable. The Council had just extended an offer of peace, but Captain Daniel Cooper knew that it was nothing more than a desperate attempt to save face. They had lost the first battle, and now they were trying to regain control. But humanity wasn't interested in their peace offers. No, humanity had something far more important to focus on. Captain Cooper stood on the bridge of his flagship, gazing out at the broken Council fleet, still drifting in the cold vacuum of space. Their defeat had been swift, but there was no time to celebrate. The Council's offer wasn't just about peace, it was about control. They thought they could manipulate humanity into retreating, but they had underestimated the power humanity had at its disposal. "We can't let them think we're backing down," Cooper said, his voice low but filled with purpose. He turned toward Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, who was standing at her station, her eyes glued to the screens. "What's the status on the hidden weapon?" Hayes didn't need to ask which weapon he was referring to. The fleet had a secret, one that only a few trusted officers knew about. It was a weapon that could change the course of this entire war. It was something so powerful, so devastating, that even the Council's most advanced fleets would stand no chance against it. "Ready to deploy," Hayes replied, her voice steady but tinged with a hint of excitement. "The engineers just finished the final adjustments. It's all set." Cooper nodded, his mind racing. This was the moment. If the Council didn't recognize humanity's strength now, they never would. "Good," he said. "Let's make sure they understand the consequences of underestimating us." The hidden weapon was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. It was a prototype, a weapon of unimaginable power that could obliterate entire fleets in a single strike. Humanity had developed it in secret, knowing that one day they might need to use it. And now that day had come. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the Council," Hayes said, her tone suddenly tense. Cooper glanced at the screen, seeing the familiar face of the Council representative again. This time, there was no confidence in his expression, only a trace of fear. "Captain Cooper," the Council representative said, his voice tight, "we've reconsidered our position. We are prepared to offer you a new deal, one that will benefit both sides. Please, listen to reason." Cooper's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just an offer of peace. It was fear. The Council had realized they were up against something far more dangerous than they had imagined. And now, they were scrambling to find a way out. "You've already shown us what you're capable of," Cooper said, his voice cool. "But we have something you haven't seen yet, something you won't be able to stop." The Council representative's eyes flickered. He could hear the finality in Cooper's words. There was no negotiation left. The Council had no more cards to play. Cooper turned to his weapons officer. "Initiate the weapons launch sequence." The order was given, and the hum of energy began to fill the ship. The fleet's hidden weapon powered up, sending a pulse of energy through every ship, each one charged with the devastating force that was about to be unleashed. On the Council's side, panic spread. They had no idea what was coming, but they knew it was something they couldn't stop. "Captain, the weapon is ready," Hayes said, her voice calm but with an edge of excitement. Cooper smiled, not with joy, but with the cold certainty that this battle would end on humanity's terms. The Council had underestimated them. Now, they would see the true power of humanity. "Fire," he said simply. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the human fleet, a beam of energy so powerful that it cut through the darkness of space like a blade. It struck the Council's remaining ships with precision, obliterating them in an instant. The energy wave spread, turning the Council's fleet to dust, leaving nothing behind but the remains of their once proud forces. The battle was over. Humanity had won. But Captain Cooper knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy had been shaken, and the Council had been shown that humanity was not a species to be feared. They were a species to be reckoned with. The devastation was complete. The Council's remaining ships had been obliterated in the blink of an eye. The powerful weapon humanity had unleashed had left no room for doubt. The galaxy now knew what humanity was capable of. But Captain Daniel Cooper didn't take a moment to enjoy the victory. The job wasn't done yet. As the last remnants of the Council's fleet drifted into nothingness, the human fleet held its position. The silence in the command center was deafening. The crew was still processing what had just happened. No one had expected this level of destruction, but it was clear now. Humanity was no longer a minor player in the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with. "Captain," Lieutenant Sarah Hayes called, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but there was a noticeable edge of concern. "We're picking up multiple ships on our scanners. It's the Council's reinforcements. They've arrived." Cooper's heart sank. He had hoped the Council would reconsider after such a decisive strike, but it seemed their pride was too great. The reinforcements weren't here to negotiate. They were here to fight. The Council's arrogance hadn't been broken by a single defeat. It had only been hardened. "Are they ready to fight?" Cooper asked, his voice calm but filled with determination. "They're gathering," Hayes replied. "It's a full fleet, Captain. They're organizing their ships for a counterattack." "Send out the orders," Cooper said. "We don't stop now. Humanity's not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for the future." The human fleet moved into position. Their ships were still intact, their shields high and their weapons fully powered. Cooper wasn't concerned about the human fleet's readiness. What mattered now was strategy. They couldn't afford to give the Council a second chance. As the Council's reinforcements approached, it was clear that the situation had changed. The Council ships were larger, heavily armored, and their weapons were more advanced than the first wave humanity had faced. But Captain Cooper had learned something important from the first battle. The Council's strength was nothing without proper strategy, and humanity had the upper hand in that department. The two fleets were now locked in a tense standoff. The Council's ships moved with precision, forming tight defensive lines. Their strategy was clear. They would surround the human fleet and slowly pick them apart. They didn't expect humanity to be able to break through such a well-organized defense. But what the Council didn't know was that the human fleet had one more trick up their sleeve. Cooper watched as the Council began to advance, their ships moving like a well-oiled machine. But that's exactly what humanity was counting on. With a single command, Cooper activated the human fleet's advanced stealth systems. The ships began to fade into the background of space, their outlines blurring as they slipped from the Council's radar. The Council's forces didn't notice at first. They were too focused on the human fleet's formation, expecting a direct confrontation. But the human ships were already in position, hidden in plain sight. And when the time came, they struck. With a burst of speed, the human fleet emerged from their stealth positions, flanking the Council's forces from both sides. The Council's ships, caught completely off guard, scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. The human fleet had already begun their assault, hitting the Council ships with pinpoint accuracy. The Council's formations shattered as their ships were disabled one by one. "We've got them," a crew member shouted from across the bridge. The battle raged on, but the tide had already turned. The Council's reinforcements, no matter how advanced their ships were, couldn't stand up to the human fleet's relentless assault. Each time they tried to regroup, the humans struck faster and harder. Captain Cooper stood at the helm, his gaze unshaken. The Council had made a critical mistake by underestimating humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to fight. Their second attempt at retaliation was faltering, and soon they would have no more reinforcements to send. "Prepare for the final push," Cooper ordered. "Let's finish this." The human fleet pressed forward, determined to finish the job. The Council had no more tricks up their sleeves. The galaxy was watching, and humanity was ready to prove that they would no longer be a footnote in history. The battle had reached a fever pitch. The Council's reinforcements had been pushed back, and their fleet was crumbling. But even as the tide shifted in humanity's favor, Captain Daniel Cooper knew that the fight wasn't over yet. The Council's remaining forces were still formidable, and the battle for the galaxy's future was far from decided. The human fleet had already dealt a crushing blow, but they were about to face the Council's last, desperate move. The Council's commanders were scrambling, trying to hold on to whatever power they had left. Despite everything, they were not yet willing to give up. "Captain, we've intercepted another transmission from the Council," Lieutenant Sarah Hayes said, her voice tense. "It's coming from the highest-ranking commander." Cooper's eyes narrowed. He had expected this. The Council had been desperate since the first defeat, and now they had one last chance to retain their dominance. "Put it through," he said. The screen flickered, and a new face appeared. A Council leader, her expression cold and unforgiving. Her eyes glimmered with a mixture of anger and desperation. "Captain Cooper," she began, her voice sharp, "you've made your point, but you've also made a grave mistake. You think you've won, but you haven't. We still hold power, and we will use it." Cooper didn't flinch. He knew what was coming. The Council had always been about power, about control. But what they didn't understand was that humanity didn't fight for power. They fought for survival, for the future. "We've seen enough," Cooper replied. "You had your chance. You're not in control anymore." The Council leader's eyes flashed with fury. "You'll regret this, human. We are not finished. We have weapons you cannot even imagine." Cooper's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't let it show. He'd heard rumors, whispers of the Council's secret weapons, devices that could turn the tide of the war in an instant. But even if they did have something powerful, Cooper wasn't afraid. Humanity had already proven they could stand up to anything the Council threw at them. "Then show us," Cooper said firmly. "We're ready." The Council leader's face darkened. "So be it. We'll see if you can survive the final phase of this war. Prepare for the reckoning." The transmission cut out, and the screen returned to the battlefield. The human fleet braced for whatever was coming next. Cooper turned to his officers, his face determined. "Stay sharp. Whatever they're planning, we'll handle it." Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. The Council's ships were regrouping, moving into a defensive formation. Cooper knew they were preparing to activate their hidden weapon, the one the Council had been saving for this exact moment. And then it happened. A massive energy wave surged from the Council's flagship, rippling through space like a shockwave. The human fleet's sensors immediately picked it up, and the crew went on high alert. The energy was unlike anything they had encountered before. Vast, powerful, and destructive. "Shields up," Hayes shouted. Cooper's heart pounded as the human fleet's shields flared to life, absorbing the first wave of energy. But the second wave was stronger, and the shields began to flicker. The human fleet was being pushed to its limits. "Captain," another officer called, his voice frantic. "Our shields are failing. We need to pull back." Cooper clenched his fists, refusing to retreat. Humanity didn't back down, and they certainly weren't going to start now. He turned to his crew with a look of resolve. "No retreat. We press forward. This ends today." With a wave of his hand, the human fleet pushed forward, their weapons blazing. They fired relentlessly, determined to take down the Council's flagship and end this conflict once and for all. The Council flagship, now weakened by the energy wave, was vulnerable. The human fleet's precision strikes began to tear through its defenses, and within moments, the massive ship began to break apart. The Council's last hope was crumbling. Captain Cooper stood tall as the flagship fell. "This is it," he said quietly. "We've won." But even as the Council's power began to disintegrate, Cooper knew that their influence wouldn't fade quietly. The Council had held the galaxy in its grasp for centuries, and the consequences of their fall would ripple through the stars for years to come. Humanity had won, but the true challenge was just beginning. The galaxy would have to rebuild, and humanity would have to show the galaxy what true strength meant. The final blow had been struck, but the war was far from over. Humanity had won the battle, but now the galaxy was left to pick up the pieces. The Council's reign had crumbled, but there was something more hidden beneath the surface, a secret that humanity hadn't yet uncovered. Captain Daniel Cooper stood on the bridge of his flagship, his hands resting on the console. The immediate danger had passed, but a deep unease still lingered in the air. He knew that something wasn't right. The Council's defeat had come too easily, and yet it felt like there was something more going on behind the scenes, something that had been carefully hidden from the galaxy. "Captain," Lieutenant Sarah Hayes said, breaking his thoughts, "we've intercepted another transmission. It's from one of the Council's surviving leaders." Cooper's eyes sharpened. He'd hoped this wouldn't happen. But it seemed the Council had one last trick up its sleeve. "Put it through," he ordered. The screen flickered, and a new face appeared, one that was unfamiliar. A man, humanoid, with a stern expression and cold eyes. "Captain Cooper," he said, his voice calm but thick with suspicion. "I assume you believe you've won, but I must inform you, you haven't even begun to understand what you've destroyed." Cooper's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" The man smiled, though it was more of a grimace. "You've defeated the Council, yes, but that was never the real threat. The true power, the one that has been guiding the Council all along, is something much darker, something that you and your people are not prepared for." Cooper leaned forward, his pulse quickening. "What are you talking about?" The man's gaze shifted, as though weighing whether to continue. The Council's control over the galaxy, the power it wielded, wasn't all their own. They were just pawns in a much larger game. You see, there is a faction, a secret organization, that has been pulling the strings behind the Council. A group of beings older than any of the species you've encountered. They've been using the Council to maintain their hold over the galaxy. "Who are they?" Cooper demanded, his voice sharp. The man hesitated before answering, his eyes narrowing. "They are known as the Ascendants, and they are not finished. The Council may have fallen, but their plan was never about controlling one species, or even the entire galaxy. It was about something much more terrifying. The Ascendants have their sights on a new target, humanity." Cooper's mind raced. The Ascendants, a group of beings that had been secretly manipulating the galaxy for centuries. This was bigger than he could have ever imagined. The screen flickered again, and the man's face became more serious. "I'm not telling you this out of kindness, Cooper. I'm telling you because you need to understand something. The Ascendants will not be stopped by your fleets, your technology, or your weapons. They are beyond anything you've ever seen. They will come for you, for your people. And when they do, it will be the end of humanity." Before Cooper could respond, the transmission abruptly cut off, leaving only silence in the room. "What in the world was that?" Hayes whispered, staring at the screen. Cooper clenched his jaw. This was no ordinary victory. It had been too easy. And now, with the Ascendants in play, humanity was facing a much larger threat, one they couldn't possibly be ready for. "Prepare the fleet," Cooper said, his voice cold. "We're not done yet." The battle with the Council had only been the first step. The true war was about to begin. And this time, humanity would have to fight for its very survival. The Ascendants were coming, and Captain Cooper knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. Captain Daniel Cooper stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking out at the vast expanse of space. The battle with the Council was over, but the war was far from finished. His mind was heavy with the weight of what had just been revealed. There was an unseen force, a faction known as the Ascendants, that had been pulling the strings behind the Council's actions for centuries. Humanity's victory was not the end. It was only the beginning. The crew moved around him, busy with their duties, but the captain's thoughts were elsewhere. They had defeated the Council, yes, but they had no idea what was coming next. The Ascendants, a mysterious group of beings older and more powerful than anything humanity had faced, were watching. They were the true force behind the Council, and now that the Council was gone, humanity had become their next target. "Captain," Lieutenant Sarah Hayes called, breaking the silence. "We've finished reviewing the data from the last battle. The Council's remaining ships have been neutralized, and the surviving fleet is being brought into our custody." Cooper nodded, his eyes distant. "Good, but we're not done. Not by a long shot." Hayes looked at him, concern in her eyes. "We know the Ascendants are a threat, but we don't know enough about them yet. How do we fight something we don't even understand?" Cooper turned to face her, his expression hard. "That's the question, isn't it? But one thing is clear. We have to be ready. They've watched us now. They've seen what humanity is capable of, and they won't take kindly to it. They'll come for us, and when they do, we need to be prepared to fight back." The silence on the bridge grew heavier. The weight of what they were about to face seemed to hang over them all. The Ascendants weren't just a military force. They were an entire faction with unknown motives, and they were older than anything humanity had ever known. Cooper's mind raced as he considered their next steps. The human fleet had proven itself strong in battle, but that was nothing compared to the power the Ascendants might possess. He turned to his tactical officer, Commander Alex Reyes. "Reyes," Cooper said, his voice firm, "I need you to begin gathering intelligence on the Ascendants. Anything we can find, strategic positions, weaknesses, allies. We're going to need all the information we can get." Reyes nodded, his eyes focused. "Understood, Captain. We'll do everything we can to find out what we're up against." Cooper turned back to the view screen. The stars were peaceful, distant, but he knew that peace was fleeting. The Ascendants would come soon, and when they did, they would bring a new kind of war, a war where humanity wouldn't just be fighting for survival, but for the very future of the galaxy. "We'll face them head-on," Cooper said, more to himself than anyone else. "We've already proven that humanity will not back down. They think we're weak. They think we're just a small species, easy to crush. But they're wrong. And when they come, we'll show them that we're stronger than they could ever imagine." The room grew quiet once more, each crew member contemplating the weight of the coming challenge. Cooper stood tall, his resolve unwavering. He knew that the Ascendants wouldn't be easy to defeat, but humanity had something they didn't: the will to fight, to survive, and to protect what was theirs. The human fleet was ready, and Captain Cooper knew that no matter what the Ascendants threw at them, humanity would rise to meet the challenge. The war for the galaxy had just begun, and the stakes were higher than ever.